The morning sun cast long shadows across the dense jungle of Verdania 7 as the exploration vessel Starbound touched down in a small clearing. Steam rose from the damp earth where the ship's engines had melted the morning dew. Jake Morrison stepped out first, his boots sinking slightly into the soft ground as he breathed in the humid air that smelled of flowers and decay. Behind him came Zara, the young Cytherian liaison whose crystalline blue skin seemed to glow in the filtered sunlight. Her large silver eyes darted everywhere at once, taking in the alien landscape with obvious excitement. The delicate ridges along her forehead pulsed with a soft light that Jake had learned meant she was happy. "This place is incredible," Zara said, her voice carrying the musical quality that all Cytherians possessed. She moved with grace through the undergrowth, her bare feet making no sound on the jungle floor. "I can feel the life energy of every plant here. They are so different from the ones on my world." Jake adjusted his field pack and checked his equipment one more time. As the team's botanist, he was responsible for cataloging any potentially useful plant life they discovered. But more importantly, he was supposed to keep Zara safe. The diplomatic mission between humans and Cytherians was still new and losing. Their liaison on her first joint expedition would be a disaster. "Just remember what we talked about," Jake said, following her deeper into the jungle. "Unknown plants can be dangerous. Some might be poisonous, others might be carnivorous. We take samples carefully and we always stay together." Zara nodded, but Jake could see she was only half listening. Her attention was already captured by a cluster of spiral-shaped flowers that changed color as she approached them. She knelt beside them and held out her hand, not quite touching. Jake watched as tiny sparks of bioelectricity danced between her fingers and the petals. "They are trying to communicate," she said with wonder. "These flowers have a primitive consciousness. They know I am here and they are curious about me." Jake had to admit it was fascinating to watch. Cytherians had evolved alongside their planet's plant life for millions of years, developing the ability to sense and sometimes communicate with vegetation through bioelectric fields. It was one of the reasons the Galactic Council had chosen them as mediators in the growing conflict with the Harvesters, a hostile alien race that used biological weapons to clear planets. They moved deeper into the jungle, with Jake carefully taking samples and making notes while Zara explored with childlike enthusiasm. The other team members, Lisa Parker and Ryan Cox, had stayed with the ship to establish communications and monitor for any signs of danger from orbit. The jungle grew thicker as they walked, the canopy above blocking out more and more sunlight, until they moved through a green twilight filled with strange sounds and exotic smells. Jake noticed that many of the plants here were larger than normal, their leaves broader and their stems thicker. Some of the trees had trunks so wide that 20 people holding hands could not reach around them. "The soil here must be incredibly rich," Jake said, making another note. "These plants are getting nutrients from somewhere special." Zara had stopped walking and was standing perfectly still with her eyes closed. The ridges on her forehead pulsed more rapidly now, and Jake could see tiny electrical discharges playing across her skin. "There's something ahead," she said quietly. "Something large and very much alive. It is calling to me." Jake felt a chill run down his spine despite the humid warmth of the jungle. "Calling to you how?" "I can feel its thoughts. It is lonely and hungry, and it wants me to come closer. It has been waiting here for so long." "Zara, that doesn't sound safe. Maybe we should head back to the ship and—" But she was already walking forward, moving through the undergrowth with purpose. Jake hurried to catch up, his hand moving instinctively to the plasma cutter on his belt. He had spent 2 years in the colonial marines before becoming a botanist, and his combat instincts were telling him something was very wrong. They emerged into a circular clearing where the jungle canopy opened up to let in shafts of golden sunlight. In the center of the clearing stood the most beautiful flower Jake had ever seen. It was enormous, easily 3 meters across, with petals that seemed to be made of living jewels. Blues and purples and greens swirled across its surface like oil on water, and it gave off a sweet perfume that made Jake's head feel light. "Oh, Zara breathed, her eyes wide with amazement. It is magnificent. The flower seemed to pulse with its own inner light, and Jake noticed that the electrical patterns on Zara's skin were beginning to match its rhythm. She took a step forward, then another, as if drawn by an invisible rope. "Zara, stop," Jake said, but his voice sounded far away even to himself. The flower's perfume was making him dizzy, and he had to shake his head to clear his thoughts. Something is wrong here. This doesn't feel natural, but Zara was no longer listening to him. She walked forward like someone in a dream, her silver eyes reflecting the swirling colors of the massive bloom. The flower seemed to sense her approach, and its petals began to open wider, revealing a dark interior that glistened with moisture. Jake tried to move but found his legs felt heavy and unresponsive. The sweet smell was getting stronger, and he realized with growing alarm that it was some kind of drug. The flower was releasing pheromones designed to attract and disorient prey. "Zara!" he shouted, forcing himself to take a step forward. "It's a trap. The flower is hunting you." She paused for just a moment and looked back at him with confusion in her silver eyes. But then the flower pulsed again, brighter this time, and she turned back toward it with a dreamy smile on her face. Jake watched in horror as she reached the edge of the enormous bloom and leaned forward to smell its perfume more deeply. The petals, which had looked soft and delicate from a distance, suddenly revealed rows of sharp thorns along their edges. But it was too late for warnings. The flower struck like a living trap, its petals snapping shut around Zara with frightening speed. Her scream of terror and pain echoed through Jake's mind as their telepathic connection, weak as it was, carried her fear directly into his consciousness. The beautiful flower was revealed for what it truly was, a massive carnivorous plant that had evolved to hunt intelligent prey. And now it had Zara trapped inside its digestive chamber, beginning the process that would slowly dissolve her alive. Jake felt Zara's scream tear through his mind like a knife. The weak telepathic connection between them carried her terror and pain directly into his consciousness, making him stumble backward against a tree. The massive flower had closed completely around her, its jeweled petals now forming an impenetrable prison that pulsed with sickening rhythm. The sweet perfume that had drugged them both was fading, and Jake's head began to clear. He could hear muffled sounds from inside the plant. Zara was still alive, but her mental voice was growing weaker. Through their connection, he could feel something burning her skin, some kind of acid that the plant was using to begin digesting its prey. Jake activated his cum unit with shaking hands. "Lisa, Ryan, I need immediate backup at my location. Zara has been captured by a carnivorous plant, and I need extraction tools now." Lisa Parker's voice crackled through the static. "What kind of plant, Jake? How big are we talking?" "It's huge. Maybe 3 meters across, and it's got her trapped inside. I think it's dissolving her with acid. How fast can you get here?" There was a pause, then Ryan Cox's voice came through. "We're looking at your position on satellite. That jungle is too thick for the ship to land nearby. It would take us at least 20 minutes to reach you on foot, maybe longer. 20 minutes. Jake felt his heart sink as he stared at the pulsing flower. Through his connection with Zara, he could feel her life force growing dimmer with each passing second. Whatever digestive process the plant was using, it was working fast. She might not have 20 minutes. "I'm going in after her," Jake said, checking his equipment belt. He had a plasma cutter, an emergency biosuit, and a portable shield generator. It wasn't much, but it would have to be enough. "Jake, that's insane." Lisa's voice was sharp with worry. "You don't know anything about that plant's biology. You could get yourself killed." "She's dying in there," Jake replied, pulling on his biosuit. The thin material would protect him from chemical burns for a limited time, but it wasn't designed for the inside of a carnivorous plant. "I can feel her pain through our mental link. If I don't try something now, she's going to die." He approached the flower carefully, studying its structure for any weakness. The petals were sealed tight, but he noticed something interesting. The whole plant had a pulse, like a heartbeat, and every few seconds the petals would relax slightly before contracting again. It was breathing or maybe circulating digestive fluids. Jake had studied carnivorous plants on Earth during his botanical training. Venus flytraps, pitcher plants, sundews, they all had mechanisms for processing their prey. This alien version was just scaled up to hunt larger game. If he timed it right, he might be able to slip inside during the relaxation phase. He activated his plasma cutter and waited, counting the seconds between pulses. The plant's rhythm was steady, tighten for 8 seconds, relax for 3, then tighten again. 3 seconds wasn't much time, but it might be enough. Jake took a deep breath and sprinted forward just as the petals began to relax. The opening was narrow and slick with digestive fluids, but he managed to squeeze through just as the plant began to contract again. The petals snapped shut behind him, trapping him inside with Zara. The interior of the plant was like being inside a living stomach. The walls glowed with a sickly bioluminescence and were covered in a film of clear acid that immediately began eating at his biosuit. The smell was overwhelming, sweet and rotten at the same time. Digestive enzymes dripped from the ceiling. Like rain. Jake found Zara curled up in the center of the chamber, her crystalline blue skin now dulled and pitted where the acid had touched her. She was unconscious but still breathing, though each breath was labored and painful. Her natural bioluminescence was flickering weakly, like a dying light bulb. "I've got you," Jake whispered, though he wasn't sure she could hear him. He wrapped her in his emergency shield generator, creating a small bubble of protection around her body. The device would only last a few minutes, but it might be enough to keep her alive while he figured out how to get them both out. The plant seemed to sense that its prey was still active because the walls began contracting more violently. Jake was thrown against the acidic surfaces repeatedly, and he could feel his biosuit starting to fail under the chemical assault. Smoke rose from several spots where the acid had eaten through the protective material. Through his fading connection with Zara, Jake caught a glimpse of her memories. She was remembering something about plant biology from her childhood on the Catherian homeworld. Plants had organs, systems, ways of moving nutrients and waste through their bodies. If this was like a stomach, there had to be some kind of exit point. Jake activated his plasma cutter and began burning through the wall in the direction he hoped led to the plant's root system. The weapon was designed for cutting metal and rock, but it seemed to work on the plant's flesh as well. The creature thrashed in obvious pain, nearly crushing him against the opposite wall. He kept cutting, following what felt like a natural passage through the plant's body. Behind him, digestive acids were pooling deeper, and his shield generator was starting to spark and fail. Zara's breathing was getting weaker, and he could see burn marks appearing on her skin even through the protective field. The plasma cutter suddenly broke through into another chamber, this one filled with a different kind of fluid. Jake grabbed Zara and pulled her through the opening just as his shield generator finally died. They were deeper inside the plant now, in what might be its circulatory system, but at least the acid wasn't as concentrated here. Jake's biosuit was failing rapidly, with acid burns appearing on his arms and chest. He had minutes at most before the protective material gave out completely, but through the plant's translucent walls, he could see daylight filtering through from somewhere above. There was still a way out if he could find it in time. Jake carried Zara through the plant's inner passages, following the dim light that filtered down from somewhere above. The unconscious alien girl felt lighter than she should have, and Jake realized with growing alarm that the digestive acids had already begun breaking down her body mass. Her beautiful crystalline skin was becoming rough and pitted, and her natural glow was barely visible now. His own biosuit was dissolving around him in patches, leaving angry red burns on his arms and chest where the plant's fluids had touched his skin. The pain was incredible, like being splashed with boiling water, but Jake forced himself to keep moving. Every second they stayed inside this creature brought them closer to death. The passage branched ahead, and Jake had to make a choice. One tunnel led deeper into darkness while the other curved upward toward what might be the surface. He chose the upward path, hoping his instincts were right. The plant seemed to sense their movement because the walls began contracting around them, trying to push them back toward the digestive chamber. Jake pressed forward, using his plasma cutter to burn through membranes and muscle tissue that blocked their way. Each cut made the plant thrash violently, throwing them against its acid-coated walls. Jake's military training kicked in, and he used his body to shield Zara from the worst impacts, taking the punishment on his back and shoulders. Outside the plant, Lisa Parker was running through the jungle as fast as the thick undergrowth would allow. Her scanner showed Jake's position moving slowly through the creature's body, but his life signs were getting weaker. Ryan Cox was right behind her, carrying emergency medical supplies and a portable cutting laser that might be able to breach the plant's outer shell. "How much longer?" Ryan called out, breathing hard as he pushed through a curtain of hanging vines. 2 minutes if we don't get lost," Lisa replied, checking her navigation device. "But I'm not sure Jake has 2 minutes. His biosuit is failing, and Zara's life signs are barely registering." Back on the ship, Captain Ben Torres was coordinating with the medical team while studying everything they could find about carnivorous plants in the database. Most of the information was about Earth species, much smaller creatures that caught insects and small animals. Nothing had prepared them for something that could hunt intelligent beings. "There has to be something we can do from here," Torres said to Dr. Amy Collins. "Some weakness we can exploit." Dr. Collins pulled up botanical data on her screen. Jake mentioned that these plants might be connected to the harvester invasion. If that's true, they're probably engineered organisms designed to clear planets of intelligent life. But even engineered plants have biological needs. What kind of needs? Metabolism. If it's digesting prey this size, it needs enormous amounts of energy. Plants like this usually have slow metabolisms to conserve resources. If we could speed up its biological processes somehow, it might exhaust itself. Torres activated the ship's communication system. "Lisa, when you reach Jake's position, I want you to deploy the industrial plant growth stimulants we use for terraforming. Full concentration, directly onto the creature's root system." Inside the plant, Jake had found another chamber, this one, filled with a thick, syrupy fluid that glowed with the same bioluminescence as the walls. The liquid was less acidic than the digestive juices, but it was slowly dissolving his remaining protective gear. He could feel it burning his skin wherever it touched, but the pain was becoming distant and unreal as shock set in. Zara stirred in his arms, her silver eyes opening for the first time since the plant had captured her. "Jake?" she whispered, her voice so weak he could barely hear it. "Where are we?" "Inside the plant," Jake said, trying to keep his voice steady. "I'm getting you out of here." She looked at his burned face in the dissolving biosuit, understanding immediately what he had done. "You came in after me. You could have died. You're my partner," Jake said simply. "Partners don't leave each other behind?" Through their telepathic connection, Zara shared what strength she had left with Jake, helping him focus despite the pain and fatigue. Together, they could sense the plant's biological systems, the flow of nutrients, and the pulse of its alien heartbeat. She guided him toward what felt like the creature's equivalent of skin, the barrier between its body and the outside world. Jake used the last power in his plasma cutter to burn through layer after layer of plant tissue. The tool was overheating and sparking, but it cut through the organic material like butter. Behind them, they could hear the plant's digestive system working, breaking down the remains of previous victims. Finally, Jake's cutter broke through into daylight. Fresh air rushed into the wound he had created, and Jake had never been so happy to smell the jungle's humid atmosphere. He pushed Zara through the opening first, then squeezed through himself just as his plasma cutter finally died completely. They tumbled out onto the jungle floor beside the massive plant's root system. Jake's biosuit was more whole than fabric now, and his skin was covered in chemical burns. Zara was unconscious again, her breathing shallow and irregular. But they were alive and out of the creature's digestive tract. Lisa and Ryan burst into the clearing at that moment, their faces showing relief and horror in equal measure. Lisa immediately began spraying the plant growth stimulants onto its roots while Ryan rushed to help Jake with Zara. "Medical team, we need immediate evacuation," Ryan called into his comm unit. Both survivors are in critical condition. Chemical. Burns, possible internal injuries, and unknown toxin exposure. The growth stimulants began taking effect almost immediately. The massive plant started thrashing wildly as its metabolism accelerated beyond its ability to control. Its beautiful petals began to wilt and change color as it burned through its energy reserves trying to process the chemicals. Jake watched the creature that had nearly killed them both slowly collapse in on itself, its alien biology unable to handle the sudden acceleration of its life processes. Within minutes, the deadly hunter had become just another piece of jungle debris. Its threat ended forever. As the medical team arrived with their emergency transport, Jake felt Zara's hand squeeze his weakly. Through their fading telepathic connection, he sensed her gratitude and something else, the beginning of a bond that would change both their species forever. The medical bay of the Starbound hummed with activity as Dr. Amy Collins worked frantically to save both Jake and Zara. Jake lay on one biobed with his skin covered in angry red burns from the plant's digestive acids. The chemical damage went deeper than just the surface, affecting his nervous system and causing his body to go into shock repeatedly. On the bed next to him, Zara was even worse. Her crystalline blue skin had turned a sickly gray color, and the bioelectric patterns that normally danced across her body were barely visible. The plant's enzymes had been specifically designed to break down Catherian biology, and her alien physiology was struggling to repair the massive damage. "Her neural pathways are shutting down," said Vexka, the ship's Catherian medical officer. His own skin patterns pulsed with worry as he monitored Zara's vital signs. "The plant's toxins were meant to dissolve our bioelectric systems. I have never seen damage this severe." Dr. Collins moved between the two patients, using every medical technique she knew to keep them alive. Jake's human metabolism was actually helping him fight off the toxins better than expected, but his burns were so extensive that infection was a constant threat. She had to change his bandages every few hours as his body tried to heal itself. "The strange thing is," Dr. Collins said to Captain Torres, "Jake's blood work is showing some unusual changes. His immune system seems to be adapting to the plant toxins instead of just fighting them off. It's like his body is learning to process alien chemicals." Captain Torres studied the medical readouts with concern. Both crew members were critical to the mission, but more than that, they had become symbols of cooperation between humans and Catherians. If they died, it could damage the alliance that both species needed to fight the harvester threat. On the third day of their recovery, something unexpected happened. Jake was drifting in and out of consciousness when he suddenly felt Zara's thoughts touching his mind. The telepathic connection that had been weak before was now much stronger, as if their shared trauma had somehow linked them permanently. "Jake." Zara's mental voice was clearer than her physical voice had ever been. "I can see your memories. The plant did something to both of us." Jake concentrated and found he could sense her thoughts as well. Through their connection, he experienced her memories of growing up on the Catherian homeworld, surrounded by vast gardens where plants and people lived in harmony. But he also saw darker memories, recent ones of her people's encounters with the harvesters. Those plants. Zara's thoughts carried images of creatures similar to the one that had attacked them. "They are not from Verdania 7, my people have seen them before on worlds that the harvesters wanted to claim." Through their mental link, Zara showed Jake what she had learned from the plant during their brief connection. The creature had been genetically engineered, designed specifically to hunt and kill intelligent life forms. It could adapt its toxins to target different species, which explained why it had been so effective against Catherian biology. "It was a scout," Zara continued, her thoughts growing stronger as she recovered. "The harvesters plant these creatures on worlds they want to colonize. The plants eliminate the native intelligent life, then die off naturally, leaving the planet ready for invasion." Jake felt a chill as he understood the implications. If Verdania 7 had these plants, it meant the harvesters were already preparing to invade. The peaceful jungle world would become another conquest in their expanding empire. Dr. Collins noticed the increased brain activity in both patients and ran new scans. What she found amazed her. "Captain, you need to see this. Both Jake and Zara are showing signs of permanent neurological changes. Their brains are forming new connections, and Jake's immune system has developed specific antibodies to harvester bioweapons." "What does that mean exactly?" Torres asked. "It means Jake might be immune to other harvester organisms. His exposure to the plant's toxins has essentially vaccinated him against their biological weapons, and his mental connection with Zara is allowing him to understand Catherian knowledge about plant biology in ways no human has before." Over the following weeks, Jake and Zara continued to recover while learning to use their new abilities. Jake found that he could sense the presence of engineered organisms from great distances, his body reacting to their alien chemical signatures. Zara discovered that her connection with Jake allowed her to share her people's botanical knowledge directly without the need for translation or explanation. "We make a good team," Zara said one morning as they walked through the ship's garden together. Her skin had returned to its normal blue color, though faint scars remained where the acid had been strongest. "Your human determination and my Catherian plant knowledge. Together we understand things that neither of our species could learn alone." Jake nodded, flexing his hands where new skin had grown to replace what the plant had burned away. "I keep thinking about what you showed me. If there are more of these plants out there, more worlds under threat, we need to do something about it." Their conversation was interrupted by an urgent message from the bridge. Captain Torres' voice came through the intercom with barely controlled excitement. "Jake, Zara, report to the command center immediately. We've received intelligence about harvester activity in 3 nearby systems. The Galactic Council wants to know if you're ready for active duty." As they made their way to the bridge, Jake felt the familiar sensation of Zara's thoughts touching his mind. Through their connection, he could sense her determination matching his own. They had survived something that should have killed them both, and in the process they had gained abilities that might be the key to stopping the harvester invasion. "Whatever they want us to do," Zara said aloud, "we'll face it together. The plant tried to separate us by consuming us one at a time, but it failed to understand that some bonds cannot be broken, even by death." Jake smiled, feeling more confident than he had since their ordeal began. They were no longer just a human botanist and a Catherian liaison. They had become something new, a hybrid team with capabilities that neither species possessed alone. And they were ready to use those abilities to protect the galaxy from the growing harvester threat. 6 months after their escape from the carnivorous plant on Verdania 7, Jake Morrison stood before the Galactic Council chambers on the space station. Unity Prime, his dress uniform bore the insignia of the newly formed Biodefense Corps, and the scars on his hands had faded to thin white lines that caught the light when he moved. Beside him, Zara wore the ceremonial robes of a Catherian diplomat, her crystalline blue skin glowing with quiet pride. The council chamber was filled with representatives from dozens of species, all gathered to witness something that had never happened before. A human was about to receive the Cross of Valor, the galaxy's highest honor for interspecies heroism. But more important than the ceremony itself was what Jake and Zara had accomplished in the months since their rescue. The Biodefense Corps has eliminated harvester organisms on 17 worlds, announced Council Speaker Thymel, a tall reptilian being whose scales shimmered with authority. Under the leadership of Commander Morrison and Specialist Zara, the unit known as the Plant Hunters has saved millions of lives and prevented 3 full-scale invasions. Jake remembered their first mission together, just 2 months after leaving the medical bay. They had traveled to a farming world called New Eden, where similar carnivorous plants had appeared overnight in the colonists' fields. Using their telepathic connection and Jake's immunity to bioweapons, they had tracked down and destroyed 12 of the creatures before they could reproduce. The second mission had been harder. An entire moon base had gone silent after reporting strange plant growth in their hydroponics labs. When Jake and Zara arrived, they found the base overrun with mobile vines that hunted in packs like wolves. It took 3 days of careful work to eliminate the threat, with Zara using her plant communication abilities to confuse the creatures while Jake destroyed them with improved plasma weapons. By the fourth mission, word of their success had spread throughout the galaxy. Other species began volunteering for the Bio-Defense Corps, wanting to learn the techniques that Jake and Zara had developed. Soon they were leading a team of 20 specialists from 8 different worlds, each bringing unique skills to fight the Harvester threat. What started as a rescue mission has become a revolution in interspecies cooperation, continued Speaker TimeHFY. The bond forged between these two individuals has shown us that our differences make us stronger, not weaker. Jake thought about Lisa Parker and Ryan Cox, who had become the core of his support team. Lisa had developed new scanning techniques that could detect harvester organisms from orbit, while Ryan had designed portable biolabs that could analyze alien toxins in the field. They had all grown closer through shared danger and success, but it was his partnership with Zara that had truly changed everything. Their telepathic connection had evolved far beyond what either species thought possible. She could share her botanical knowledge directly with his mind, while he could give her access to human tactical thinking and problem-solving abilities. Together, they had become something greater than the sum of their parts. The most remarkable achievement, Speaker TimeHFY said, has been the development of universal bioweapon resistance. Commander Morrison's immunity has been studied and replicated, creating vaccines that protect all known species from harvester toxins. That breakthrough had come during their 8th mission, when Jake realized that his blood contained antibodies that could be adapted for other species. Dr. Amy Collins had worked with Catherian biologists to create a treatment that could protect anyone from the engineered organisms. It was the first truly cooperative medical advancement between their civilizations. Zara's mental voice touched Jake's thoughts as they waited for the ceremony to continue. Do you remember what you said when you first found me in that plant? You said partners don't leave each other behind. I remember, Jake replied through their connection. It's still true. The harvesters are planning something bigger. I can sense it through the plant network we've been studying. They're not just trying to clear individual worlds anymore. They're preparing for a massive invasion that could threaten the entire galaxy. Jake felt a familiar chill as Zara shared her concerns with him. Their success had not gone unnoticed by their enemies. The harvesters were adapting their tactics, creating new bioweapons designed specifically to counter the techniques that the plant hunters had developed. Speaker TimeHFY raised the Cross of Valor, a crystalline pendant that contained light from the homeworld of every species in the Galactic Council. Commander Morrison, your actions on Verdania 7 demonstrated the highest ideals of interspecies cooperation. You risked your life to save another being, and in doing so, you forged a bond that has protected countless others. As the pendant was placed around Jake's neck, he felt the weight of responsibility that came with it. The ceremony was beautiful, but he knew it was only the beginning. The real work lay ahead. In the dark spaces between the stars where the harvesters were gathering their forces after the ceremony, Jake and Zara stood together on the observation deck of Unity Prime, looking out at the swirling nebula that surrounded the station. Ships from dozens of worlds moved through the space lanes, carrying trade goods and diplomatic messages that had been impossible before their partnership began. The Council wants us to form a permanent task force, Zara said aloud, her silver eyes reflecting the distant stars. A mixed crew from multiple species designed to hunt down harvester advance teams before they can establish themselves. Are you ready for that kind of responsibility? Jake asked. It means we'll be away from our homeworlds for years at a time, fighting enemies we don't fully understand. Zara smiled, and Jake felt her amusement through their mental link. Have we ever faced an enemy we fully understood? Besides, I can't think of anyone else I'd rather have watching my back. Jake looked down at the Cross of Valor hanging around his neck, then back at his partner. The alien girl who had nearly been consumed by a carnivorous plant had become his closest friend and most trusted ally. Together they had saved worlds and built bridges between species that had never trusted each other before. Then let's go. Hunting, Jake said, already planning their next mission. The galaxy isn't going to protect itself. As they walked back toward their ship, Jake felt the familiar sensation of Zara's thoughts joining with his. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, proving once again that the bonds forged in crisis could overcome any threat the universe might offer.